Recording.
We're doing it. I bet you we're lined up again.
I bet we
Can
are.
I?
We've been lined up, and I was so surprised. I was convinced last week I effed it up. There was a delay, something. Nope.
And yet, listen, we're getting like, I'm not to toot our horns, but toot toot because we're getting really fucking good at getting
Yeah,
aligned. So,
we are just aligned.
we are one already. And we're, as you pointed out, we were discussing before we started recording, happy almost 1 year Oddities anniversary.
Yeah, we're coming
Whoop
up on
whoop.
it.
We're coming
We're
up.
very close, and it's very
When this
exciting.
comes out, we're super close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Holy
Yeah.
moly, guacamole. That's awesome.
Holy moly, guacamole.
You've been a superstar, amazing, brilliant, incredible, awesome co-host. I'm doing the Lady Gaga thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So thank you to you. Also, hi everybody. Welcome
Welcome
back to
back to
Oddities.
Oddities.
I'm fucking Cassie.
I'm Kellie.
And welcome back to Strange Town.
Bum bum bum.
Da 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 da. And all of our information, as per usual, is in the
Description
episode.
down
Thank you.
below.
Episode description below, or whatever platform you're listening on. We've got links galore. Check out our social media. Check out our merch shop. We have some fun new merch coming. Should I tell them what we're planning on doing?
It's entirely up to you. I mean, you're the mastermind, and I think it's glorious.
Can I just tell you, cousin Caitlin messaged me this week, and she's like, "I think you guys should do this." And I was like, "Bitch, did you hear
Okay,
me
that's
say
a
this?"
sign.
Because
That's a
I know.
sign.
So we have to do it. So, all right, I'm not gonna tell you guys, but it's gonna be at least we find it very amusing, but hopefully you guys too. Any hoozles. Also, we have a Patreon, in case you guys didn't know. Welcome, welcome. You get a bonus
We've-
episode. Yes?
We have a few new Patreons, so thank you guys.
Yes, thank you so much. We love you. And let me get this straight. We love all the Odd Fam equal, but patrons, we super appreciate your monthly donation. It does go towards the show. And also, so for as low as $1 a month, whatever your currency may be, you get a bonus episode every week. And it is just like pure, unfiltered, true shit show like us.
Unhinged, brain melting.
Maximum, really unique edits.
Cassie's brilliant editing skills. Galore.
And so if you want to continue the fun for, I don't know, less than a week of Starbucks coffee, if you go $1 a month for the whole year, like,
Facts.
you get some extra fun if you can tolerate us intolerable folks that often.
Intolerable prattling cows.
Yeah, which didn't even apply to you. You're still in the
No,
queue, my
but
friend.
the dedication to prattling cows,
That's like one of the most colorful things I've ever been called. I'm flattered. They took the time to come up with that, you know?
it's a dedication.
Yeah, it must
Yeah.
have taken ages to come up with that one. So thanks a bunch. And if you leave us a negative review, you too can be roasted endlessly. So it's your call. And if you do like us, please take the time to leave a positive review too.
You won't be roasted.
You won't be roasted. We'll build a small shrine to you in the corner of our offices, and that'll be that. But well, anyway, shall we get to the fun? How are you?
I'm good. As you know, Cassie, most of the time I save things for a recording, but like this week, I specifically messaged Cassie and I was like, this cannot wait
I've been
until
dying.
Sunday.
Yeah, I know. That was so funny when I received that.
My kids were running around, as they do, playing.
As they do. Yep.
And my oldest, the one who usually sees the spooky shit, stops, goes, "Hi, ghost. High five," proceeds to go and keep playing. And
I I think that we also need to set the stage that this happened on like the day of all days. For you.
yeah,
Like there
I
was
was
enough.
having the worst day of days. And it took everything in me not to yell, "What the fuck?" And genuinely, in order for me not to do that, it was to message Cassie.
I love it.
And Cassie's, are you going to talk to him about that?
And that was me selfishly being like, I need to know more.
And the answer was yes. I sat down with him the next morning with pancakes and hot chocolate.
Excellent plan. Good, yes.
Because, like, you gotta bribe them.
Butter them up. That's right.
And he assured me that it was pretend.
Was it?
But then told me, I need goggles to see ghosts, but he doesn't need goggles to see ghosts. And you know what? That's a conversation for another day. We will...
Like, praise be. And also, where can I get a pair? Like, hook me up with some of those. I want to see some dead people. We still have no further information on the ghost hole.
Than answers.
Yeah, we don't know. I don't know that he's pretending. I mean, I'm not trying to wish this on you, but I want your place to be haunted as fuck. Because I want to come visit, and I want to see this shit.
You know what? I don't blame you.
Thank you.
I don't blame you.
Thank you for understanding. So that was a colorful... Actually, it's really just been a colorful week all around, hasn't it?
It has. It's been a week.
Yeah, it has.
It's been a damn week.
It's been like a solid, well, it's really been my whole life, but I think maybe especially like the last 6 months or so have been a lot in particular.
I just kind of, like, every day it's been, what?
Yeah, there's a solid what the fuck. Actually, I think the number of times that I've said to myself aloud, what the fuck, it's increased dramatically over the last few weeks, just day to day. Like, it's just going way up. Oh, I wanted to show you. Check out this cute little wrist rest.
It's and I have cloud.
A matching. I know, I have a matching one for my keyboard. Is it not this came this week? This was like the highlight.
That is adorable.
Also, my new panda mouse.
Panda.
I know.
So that's the highlight of Cassie's week, if everyone understands Cassie's week.
We're setting the bar real low, kids. Yeah, I mean, on my side, so I'm very much in, like, my fixing up the house era now that a lot of other things in my life have wrapped up. So, like, we had the painters out and did a bunch this week. I'm getting ready to hang a bunch of stuff in my office, so my office will be complete, and then we're going to do some other things. We've got the garden is fucking exploding. We have all kinds of shit growing. Couldn't tell you what any of it is, because, like, a couple of amateurs, we didn't label it. So, that's fine. But we got vegetables. That's all I can tell you. And I gave my dog the Heimlich this week. That was another
what the F moment.
Yes, I feel... Should I relay the story? Because I feel like maybe... Okay, so the painters were here. The dogs they'd been, like, cordoned off with me all week. So I was like, okay, they left for the day. Let's go outside and play a little bit. I'm tossing the ball around the backyard. Our backyard's fenced in. They're running around. They're losing their little minds. And then in the middle of that, we also practiced some of, like, the commands and training that we're working on. So, I called them over and they both came and I got them to sit, whatever, and I gave them each a little treat. And I was like, okay, like, break. And then they, take off again. And Donut starts making these ungodly fucking noises. I've never heard these fucking noises in my life. And so internally, my mind goes, that dog is choking. And then I question myself and I'm like, how do you know that? And internally, I'm like, we just know she's choking.
Mama instincts.
Yeah, and
that's
I was like,
how.
I, like, sprung into action. I, like, went over to her. I opened up her mouth. I grabbed her and, like, tilted her forward. And I did the pushing. And I did the thing. And I just, like, while I'm doing this, I'm like, how do I even know what, like, somehow I know what this is. And she, like, the thing came out. And then she ate it again and chewed and swallowed. But meantime, the real thoughts going through my mind was like, okay, this dog is choking. I run up to her. Donut's looking at me with crazy eyes. And I'm just like, as I wrote to you, giddy up, bitch. Let's just do this fucking thing. And then I start doing the Heimlich. Donut's still looking at me. She's, like, turning her head back to look at me with crazy eyes. The thing comes shooting at her. And she eats it again.
I wonder if she thought She got a second treat.
Maybe. I don't know what the... Essentially, my stream of consciousness was what the fuck, and donuts was also what the fuck, I guarantee it. But she's fine, all good in the hood.
Was Corey there to witness this?
No.
I really wish you had a witness to all of this.
I swear to you, like, I don't even know... I just don't even know how I do. Like, it just, like, I was like, okay, the dog's choking, time to do this thing. And I somehow magically knew how to give her the Heimlich. I don't know. It was fucking weird. I was like, this is how I do it on humans. So, like, let's do it on, like, the dog.
Mama instincts, I'm telling you. You just knew what to do.
Did I ever tell you about the time? So, like, we learned CPR and stuff in high school during health class. And there were, like, these fake babies. Because, you know, there's, like, an alternate version for babies and whatever. And you like smacked the baby a couple times. I smacked the baby so hard the head came off. And our health classes were taught by the gym teachers. And the gym teacher just looks at me, she goes, I really love the enthusiasm, but maybe don't do it that hard.
Maybe don't knock the baby's head off.
It's the hand of God. What can I say? Just smack the shit out of it, and either the kid's head will fall off or the food will come out. There's only two options.
You know, fun story.
Another
talking about the Heimlich. When I was like little, 2, 3, something. I was little.
4, 5, 6. Yeah.
I was in a car seat in the back of the van, and my sister had marbles.
Oh no.
And I remember being handed marbles.
Oh, no.
The marbles ended up in my mouth. And then I remember my mom hanging me upside down, giving me the Heimlich.
I love it. I love it.
And I remember, my family does not let me live this down.
I choked one time when I was a kid at a Chinese restaurant. And my parents just sat there and looked at me. While I was I think they just didn't know what to do, and I reached into my own mouth and pulled out like a strip of beef, like this fucking.
Damn.
I know. I like saved myself. My parents, I think they were just in shock. They're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Don't worry, parents. I'll save myself.
Don't worry. I'll take care of this, guys. I'll just carry the team. It's fine. Wow. Well, this was a colorful intro, wasn't it?
Yep, and we're almost at our 13th minute mark, so.
That's how we do.
And that's how our week was, Odd Fam.
And that's how that was. Hopefully everybody else's was maybe just like, I don't know, a little less zany.
Yep.
I don't know, a little less odd. Okay, so should we get the party started? I don't remember who started last time. I got to be honest.
I believe I started last time.
Okay, mine's a little heavy.
Yours is heavy. Mine is, I would say heavy but light, but I know for a fact yours is heavy. And I know for a fact yours is long.
It's not. I just didn't get the chance to cull through that, so I got a different topic. Surprise.
Oh, okay.
We're saving the super heavy for next week.
Oh, okay. Well, mine's
let's do you.
Okay.
Let's do this thing.
Well, I'm covering Demon Core.
A Demon Core? Wait, is it like a fashion? Like cottage core? Oh, okay. Because I was so in.
It's, first off, it's both as cool and not as cool as it sounds.
Demon Core. Yeah, I know. Like, how do you... All right, well, okay, just...
And, like... Yeah. So, first off, this one is brought to you by my lovely husband. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, thank you, Michael.
Secondly, this is brought to you by my husband coming to bed at midnight and saying, you should cover Demon Core.
Demon Core.
And me going, what the is Demon Core? At midnight. And not last night, but like this was during the week, and then I was fascinated. So,
well, even better that this happened during this week. I do love that. It's on top of everything else.
It's very on trend.
Yeah.
Hold on, I have something in my eye and I can't read.
Oh my god, okay.
Also on trend.
Elevator music here.
Anyways, so we all know about the atomic nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki,
Mm-hmm.
and the devastating aftermath towards the end of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was another plutonium core meant to use in another atomic attack on Japan if they hadn't surrendered.
Oh my word. Okay.
And it's
And this was the
this.
Demon Core?
And it's known as the Demon Core.
Wow. What a name.
Right?
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
and it was not used, and it was instead shipped back to the US, and it
I
killed two
don't love that we're
scientists.
Oh, it killed two scientists? I was just gonna say I don't love that we're just like shipping this around. Like, yeah, let's
Yeah.
just pack it up. UPS will come get it. Like what?
And yeah, so this is the story of the Demon Core.
The Demon Core. Okay.
um,
Demons.
so like the story of like the day that it happened and their what led to their deaths, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Uh, on the afternoon of May 21st, 1946, at a secret laboratory tucked into a canyon in Los Alamitos, New Mexico, the birthplace of the atom bomb.
It's always New Mexico.
It's weird stuff is happening in New
Like
Mexico.
always the shit in New Mexico. Yeah.
Louis Slotin, a Canadian physicist, was showing his colleagues how to bring the exposed core of a nuclear weapon nearly to the point of criticality. A tricky
Criticality.
operation known as tickling the dragon's tail.
Don't love that. Don't love why that name? Why'd they like of all the
Why
things they
that
could have
term?
Yeah, like why is that what we're called? Why did we of all the things we could choose, that's what we went with?
Yeah.
What are we doing? As per usual. What are we doing? Alright, so we're tickling the
the
dragon's
dragon's
tail.
tail.
Mother of God.
The core sitting by itself on a squat table looked unremarkable. A hemisphere of dull metal with a numb plutonium sticking out of its center. The whole thing warm to touch because of its radioactivity.
Why are we touching it? But okay. Sure. Why not? We're tickling the tail.
It had been quickly molded to the shape after the bombing of Nagasaki to be used in another attack on Japan, then relocated when it turned out to not be needed for the war effort, like I had said. At the time, Slotin was perhaps the world's foremost expert in handling dangerous quantities of plutonium. He helped assemble the first atomic weapon barely a year earlier. Um, Slotin's procedure was simple. He would lower half the shell of beryllium. That's not how you say it.
Beryllium?
Yes, thank you. Called the tamper over the core, stopping just before it was snugly seated. The tamper would reflect back the neutrons that were shooting off of the plutonium, starting a weak and short-lived nuclear chain reaction, which on the physicist could then gather the data. Slotin held the tamper in his left hand, and in his right hand he held a long screwdriver.
Listen, I just gotta pause this right here. The size of the balls to go up to this thing and be like, yeah, I'm gonna hold this, and then I'm also gonna, what the fuck?
Yeah, very dangerous. Very
Once again,
dangerous shit going on here.
what are we doing? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, Darwin Awards. That's all. Carry on.
In his right hand, he held a long screwdriver, which he planned to wedge between the two components, keeping them apart. As he began the slow and painstaking process of lowering the tamper, one of his colleagues, Rammer Schreiber,
Okay.
turned away to focus on other work, expecting that the experiment would be uninteresting. until several more moments had passed, but suddenly he heard a sound behind him. Sloaten's screwdriver had slipped. The
Oh
tamper
no.
had dropped fully over the core. When Schreiber turned around, he saw a flash of blue light and felt a wave of heat over his face. A week later, he wrote a report over the mishap. The blue flash was clearly visible in the room. Although the room, was illuminated from the windows, and possibly overhead lights. The total duration of the flash could not have been more than a few tenths of a second. Sloten reacted very quickly in flipping the tamper piece off. Time was about 3 p.m.
Shit.
A guard who was stationed in the room to keep an eye on the precious plutonium had little knowledge of what Sloten was doing, but when the core started to glow and people started yelling, he promptly ran out the door and up a nearby hill.
Same.
He booked it out of there.
He was like, I'm not fucking paid enough. Later. The only smart one in that whole room.
Right. He's like, hell no. I'm not getting paid enough for this crap. Get me out.
No. Oh, I love that. All right, carry on.
Calculations put a total of number of reactions at about 3 quadrillion.
Mm-hmm.
A million times smaller than the first atomic bombs, but still enough to send out a significant burst of radioactivity. This radioactivity exited the electrons in the air, which, as they slipped back into the unexited state, emitted high energies of protons, a blue flash.
That would be the photons.
Yes. An ambulance was called. The lab was mostly evacuated as the scientists waited for help to arrive.
Mostly.
Not all, just mostly. They tried to work out how much radiation they had received. Sloten had made a sketch of where everyone had been standing when the slip occurred. He then tried to use a radiation detector on various items that were near to the core. A bristle brush, an empty Coca-Cola bottle, a hammer, a measuring tape, but it proved difficult to get an accurate reading because the detector itself had been heavily contaminated. You don't say.
You think? Oh my god. Who the fuck hired these people? Also, why is there a Coke bottle in the lab? Stop. We know this. You can't have any food or drink in the lab.
This was the 1940s. What do you expect?
I know. They were probably like smoking.
This was a very different time.
This was like, I know. Okay.
Sloten instructed one of his colleagues to lay radioactivity detecting film badges around the area, which required the scientists to go dangerously close to the still overheated core. The errand resulted in no useful data. Again, obviously.
What are we doing? What a bunch of clowns. Okay.
And was mentioned in later report as evidence that after the exposure of the magnitude, human beings are in no condition for rational behavior.
Sounds right.
I mean,
yeah. I mean, if the shoe fits.
The witnesses to the demonstration were taken to the Los Alamos hospital. Sloten vomited once prior to being examined and then several times more in the next few hours, but stopped by the next morning. His general health seemed acceptable, but his left hand, initially numb and tingling, became increasingly painful. This was the hand that had been closest to the core. And scientists later estimated that it had received more than 15,000 rem of low-energy X-rays. Sloten's whole body was dosed around 2,100 rem of neutron rays. Sloten's neutrons, gamma rays, and X-rays. 500 rem is usually fatal for humans. The hand eventually took on large blisters, so like essentially burns.
Yeah.
Sloten's physicians kept it packed on ice to limit the swelling and the pain. His right hand, which had been holding the screwdriver, suffered lesser versions of these symptoms. So, like when you think about it, I kind of think of like he may have been
Mm-hmm.
electrocuted. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Slotin called his parents in Winnipeg, who were flown out to New Mexico on the Army's dime. That was really importantly
Oh.
noted several times.
I was like, I don't know if you know this, but we paid for this. It's like, you
They
probably
wanted
should.
credit.
Like, okay.
um, they arrived 4 days after the incident. On the fifth day, Slotin's white blood cell count dropped dramatically. His temperature and pulse began to fluctuate. From this day on, the patient failed rapidly. The medical report noted Slotin suffered nausea, abdominal pain, and began losing weight. He
Mm-hmm.
had internal radiation burns. One medical expert called three-dimensional sunburns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
radiation's no joke, kids. Like,
By the seventh day, he was experiencing periods of mental confusion. His lips had turned blue. He was put into an oxygen tent after that. Eventually, he sank into a coma. He died 9 days after the incident.
not a pleasant way to die.
He died at the age of 35. The cause was recorded as acute radiation syndrome, also known as radiation sickness. His body was shipped to Winnipeg for burial in a sealed army casket.
Is it like lead lined too?
I
Because
would, I
otherwise
would,
he's just hanging out in the ground irradiating everybody.
I would imagine so.
Damn.
Um, Slotin was one of only two people to die from radiation exposure at the Los Alamos, uh, while the laboratory was under military control in those early years from 1943 to 1946. Um, there were about 2 dozen other deaths, and this is just like I don't know why this is listed, but there's a few funny ones. Um, a truck and tractor incidents, inadvertent weapon discharges, an unfortunate suicide, a drowning, a fall from a horse. 4 fatalities for just bad luck involving a group of janitors who shared a Moscato wine that was laced with antifreeze.
I have a lot of questions around a lot of this.
Yep, I want to go deeper into them. Um,
Yeah.
but only Slotin and his coworker, Harry Dahagian Jr., succumbed to the special hazards of the Manhattan Project. And it's known as the Manhattan Project, not exactly
Yes.
the Demon Core.
It should be known as the Demon Core. Let's be
Um,
real. It's a cooler name.
9 months to the day before Slotin's accident, Dahagilin had been working with the very same plutonium core performing a different experiment that used tungsten carbonide blocks instead of the beryllium tampered. He dropped one of the blocks and the core
Oh, fuck.
briefly went critical. He took nearly a month to die.
That sucks.
Yeah. And that is the demon core.
Jesus. I mean, I know like only a couple died, but I would wager a lot of people dealt with the effects of radiation after that incident that were in the lab and
Oh, I
whatnot.
imagine they had
Yeah.
serious
Yeah.
symptoms
Which,
and
shit.
um, oh gosh, the word is escaping me right now.
Okay. It'll come back.
It's gone forever.
It's gone out into the
I would imagine
ether.
they had lifelong effects,
Yeah, I would think so.
or
Probably.
I would imagine it probably shortened their life too, because in
Probably
that
so.
time radiation was not used like it is now. Like
No, it
radiation is used
wasn't.
for cancer.
It wasn't a controlled radiation.
Yeah, and radiation is nasty.
Here's
It's
here's the
just it
bottom
is.
here's the bottom line. Don't go tickling the dragon's tail.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Just don't. Also, don't play with like plutonium. Like, I
Don't
mean,
have
I
a
don't
Coke
really.
bottle in a lab.
Yeah, yeah. Seriously, be better. Wow. I have so many questions about really the second half of that when you listed all those other bizarre
I
deaths that
think
have
I'm gonna
occurred.
have to make a second half because
The
like
drowning, the horse, the
I have a lot
Moscato.
of questions about this lab, and
Yeah,
I think I need to make a part two about this lab because I'm like, you listed all these deaths, and now I have so many unanswered questions.
I just need to say that, guys, if Kelly goes missing, it's the government. And it's because she was poking around into these weird ass Moscato laced with antifreeze? Who? Why?
And it's like an unfortunate group of janitors. No,
Um,
they
uh,
were targeted.
I don't.
Also, I would like to know if the security guard had any long-term effects. Because he knew something was going on and he went running for the hills.
I'm
Did he
telling you, the
have
security
any?
guard,
Like, he had the right idea. Get the hell out of there.
he
Did
was the
he get out of
smartest one
there
there.
in the right amount of time?
Yeah, I don't know. Was he fast enough? Too fast, too furious? Wow. I think I'm like a little bit at a loss for words, but thank you.
Yeah.
That was great.
And again, that's a shout out to Michael. Thank you, honey. So,
Thank you, honey. I'm I'm covering totally different. We're in a different realm. I'm doing some true crime. This is from listener Hannah / my coworker / my buddy. So thank you, Hannah.
thank you, Hannah.
I'm talking about Gary Gilmore, not as in anybody on the Gilmore Girls. Just
Immediately, the theme song plays in my head, though.
yeah, but I know, seriously. All right, so let's talk about Senor Gary. Gary was born in McCamey, Texas on December 4th, 1940. He was one of four sons to Frank and Bessie Gilmore, and his brothers were named Frank Jr., Galen, and then there was also one that went on to become a writer and music journalist, Mikal Gilmore. Frank was kind of a douche. He was like an alcoholic con man. He had other wives and families, none of whom he supported.
Rude.
So, like, real class act here. And then on a whim, he marries Bessie.
Love the name.
She was a Mormon outcast from Provo, Utah, and they got married in Sacramento, California.
Okie dokie.
I know. She also died on my birthday. I mean, about 11 years prior, but my
Still,
birth date. Pretty cool.
significant.
I know. So Gary, the son Gary, was born while they were living in Texas. They were living in Texas under the pseudonym of Kaufman because they were trying to avoid the law. So this is the kind of environment in which Gary grew up in, yes? Okay, we're just kind of setting the scene here a little bit. Gary was officially christened Faye Robert Kaufman, which, by the way, Faye I've only ever heard as a female name. I've never heard
I
it
was
used
about
as a male
to
name.
make
That's a new
comment on
thing.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anywho, once they left Texas, Bessie went ahead and changed it to Gary. She was like, listen, Frank, you're not doing our son any favors here by naming him Faye. But anyway, the name change proved to be a sore point years later. Frank's mother's name was Faye. She kept the original Faye Kaufman birth certificate. And then when Gary found out about it 2 decades later, he assumed he has to be either illegitimate or somebody else's son. And he seized on this as the reason that he and his father never got along. He became very upset and he walks out on his mother when she tries to explain the name change. Anyway, this theme of like illegitimacy, whether it's real or imagined, it was common in the Gilmore family name, right? Frank Sr.'s mother, Faye, once told Bessie that Frank Sr.'s father was a famous magician who had passed through Sacramento where she was living. Bessie then researched this and concluded that Frank was the illegitimate son of Harry Houdini. In fact, Houdini was only 16 years old in 1890, which was the year of Frank Gilmore's birth, and did not begin his career as a magician until the following year. So that's bogus. So whether Faye really meant that Frank Sr.'s father was somebody who would later become known as a famous magician, we just don't know. So that's just a fun little tidbit. McCall Gilmore, Gary's youngest brother, believes the story to be false and has stated that both his father and mother, though, believed it. Anyway, during Gary's childhood, the family relocated a lot throughout the western United States. Frank supported them by selling fake magazine subscriptions.
I mean, okay.
He had a brand and he stuck to it, okay? I mean,
Yep.
We can say that of Frank Sr. Gary had a troubled relationship with his father. His younger brother, Mikal, described the father as a cruel and unreasonable man. Frank was known to be strict. He had like a very short temper. He would whip his sons. for little to no reason, and then less often he would beat his wife. So this guy really sucks. But then apparently he mellowed somewhat with age. McCall reports that Frank whipped him only once and never did it again after McCall told him, "I hate you." So this was just
Okay.
like all around a very colorful household. Then Frank and Bessie would also argue very loudly. They would verbally abuse each other. Frank would anger Bessie by calling her crazy and defame Brigham Young, who was the second president and prophet of Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as he would call him Brigham Young, which is really gross.
Ew.
But yeah. Bessie would retaliate by calling him a cat licker, which is also, I guess, a term for Catholic, and then she would threaten to kill him sometimes. So it was all very fun and great. In 1952, the Gilmore family settles in Portland, Oregon. By the way, how do you say Oregon?
Oregon.
What the fuck? My whole life, it has been Oregon. I recorded an episode for the podcast at work, and everybody nuked me for saying Oregon. They're like, it's Oregon. Growing up, I swear to God, in school, it was always the Oregon Trail. Maybe it's an East Coast thing.
Maybe I'm thinking it's an East Coast thing. Genuinely, I'm thinking it's an Coast thing. I have a friend who lives there. I'm going to ask her
Okay.
because she just moved there. I'm sure she's surrounded by people who've lived there their whole lives.
Yeah.
I want to know how they pronounce it.
I mean, it's spelled like Oregon.
I see nothing wrong with how you're pronouncing it though, and people need to leave you alone. This is what bothers
It's
me.
fine.
Sorry, tangent.
Okay.
If somebody is pronouncing something differently, nobody should be roasting anybody for it. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. We all just bust on each other, but it has given me, I think I have like a complex now. Like, I think I'm fucked up from this. I question everything.
Oh, no.
Everything I've learned. Any hoozles, back to our Gary Gilmore. They settle in Portland, Oregon. As an adolescent, Gary starts engaging in petty crime. Okay, so he had an IQ test score of 133. He had high scores on both aptitude and achievement tests. He showed artistic talent. He was a smart guy, but he drops out of high school in ninth grade. And then he runs away from home with a friend to Texas. And then after a few months, he returns back to Portland. So he had it was very up, down, left, right, here, there, everywhere. So by the age of 14, Gary starts a small car theft ring with his friends. He's like, this sounds like fun, whatever. And it results in his first arrest. He's released to his father with a warning. 2 weeks later, he's back in court on another car theft charge. So the court remands him to the McLaren Reformed School for Boys. This is in Woodburn, Oregon, from which he was released the following year, and then he's sent to Oregon State Correctional Institution on another car theft charge in 1960, and then he's released later that year. So he's just like all the fuck over the place. Meanwhile, in 1961, his father's diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, and he dies at the end of July 1962. While Gary's in Rocky Butte Jail in Portland, facing charges of driving without a license. It wasn't the car theft, it was just drive without a license. Go figure.
Yep.
So anyway, a jail guard tells Gary that his father dies. And despite his dysfunctional relationship that he had with Frank Sr., Gary was actually devastated. And he tries to end his life by slitting his wrists. After his father dies, Gary goes and he gets into more and more trouble. This wild side of him came out, which is bullshit to me because I would argue that that's already out. He was at the age of 14 stealing cars, but okay. Anyway, he was drunk a lot, all kinds of shit. He faced assault and armed robbery charges in 1964. He's given a 15-year prison sentence. He's like a habitual offender. He goes to the Oregon State Penitentiary. And then a prison psychiatrist diagnoses him with antisocial personality disorder with intermittent psychotic decompensation. Say that 3 times fast. Then he's granted conditional release in 1972 to live weekdays in a halfway house in Eugene. And he studies art at a community college.
Oh.
We like some, rehabilitation efforts. That's okay. But then he never registered, and then within a month, he's arrested and convicted of armed robbery. So, way to go, Gary. Shit the bed on that. So due to his violent behavior in prison, he's transferred in 1975 to the federal prison in Marion, Illinois. And at that time, it was a maximum security facility. And he was conditionally paroled in April of 1976. He goes to Utah to live with a distant cousin, Brenda, who tried to help him find work. He works briefly for his uncle at a shoe repair shop, and then for an insulation company owned by a man named Spencer McGrath, and he soon returns to his previous lifestyle, where he's stealing, he's drinking heavily, he's getting into fights. Now he's 35 years old. He has a relationship with somebody named Nicole Barrett Baker, who was a 19-year-old, so
Ugh.
and she'd been married twice before and had 2 young children. And the relationship at first was casual, but soon they became very intense, and then it became strained due to Gary's aggressive behavior and pressure from Nicole was feeling pressure from her family. They didn't want her to see him anymore. So here's where things turn, and this is what Gary Gilmore's actually known for. On the evening of July 19th, 1976, Gary Gilmore robs and murders Max Jensen, a gas station employee in Utah. The next evening, he then goes and robs and murders Benny Bushnell, who was a motel manager in Utah. Although both men had complied with the demands that Gary, I guess, presented when he was robbing them, he goes ahead and murders them. They were each ordered to lie down. They were shot in the head. Both were students at Brigham Young. Both left widows. They left windows with infants. Widows with infants.
Wow.
And then while disposing of the .22 caliber pistol used in both killings, Gilmore accidentally shoots himself in his right hand. Oops. And he leaves a trail of blood. This leads to the service garage where he left his truck to be repaired prior to murdering Benny Bushnell. Mechanic Michael Simpson witnesses Gilmore hiding the gun in the bushes. Seeing the blood on Gilmore's very crudely bandaged hand when he approaches to pay for the repairs for his truck, and then hearing on a police scanner of the shooting in a nearby motel, Simpson writes down Gilmore's license plate number, and he calls the police. Very smart.
Yeah.
Gilmore's cousin Brenda turns him into the police shortly after he phoned her asking for bandages and painkillers because of his hand injury. And then the Utah State Police apprehend Gilmore as he's trying to leave Provo. He gave up without attempting to flee, and although he was charged with the murders of Jensen and Bushnell, the Jensen case was never brought to trial because there were no eyewitnesses, supposedly. So here's the trial itself. It began at the Provo Courthouse, October 5th, 1976. It lasted 2 days. A motel guest testified that he saw Gilmore in the motel registration office that night. After taking the money, he reports that, Gary told Mr. Bushnell to lie down on the floor. He shoots him. An FBI ballistics expert matches the 2 shell casings in the bullet that killed Bushnell to the gun hidden in the bush. And then a patrolman testifies that he traced Gilmore's trail of blood to the same bush. Gilmore's 2 court-appointed lawyers, Michael Epslin and Craig Snyder, they make no attempt to cross-examine the witnesses, and they rest without calling any witnesses for the defense. So basically, they were just like, we're not even going to bother.
Yeah.
So Gary protests, and the following day asks if he can take the stand in his own defense, perhaps arguing that due to the dissociation and lack of control that he felt at the time, he had a good case for insanity. So he tried to plead insanity. His attorneys presented the findings of 4 separate psychiatrists, all of whom said that Gary was aware of what he was doing and that he knew it was wrong at the time. And while he does have this antisocial personality disorder, which they all agreed upon, which may have been aggravated by drinking and drugs, he didn't meet what was considered legal criteria for insanity. So Gilmore withdraws his request, and then during closing statements, Epslin mentions that since Gilmore had accidentally shot himself, he might have accidentally killed Bushnell. And then mentioning this lack of witnesses to the shooting, he asked the jury to find Gilmore guilty of second-degree murder or even acquit him. On October 7th, the jury retires to deliberate, and by midday, they returned with a guilty verdict for first-degree murder. And then they all unanimously recommend a death sentence due to the special circumstances of the crime. So Gary, chooses not to pursue habeas corpus relief. His mother, Bessie, sues for a stay of execution on his behalf, and it's refused. And here's what's interesting about all this. So the court's per curiam opinion said that the defendant had waived his rights by not pursuing them, and at the time, Utah had 2 methods of execution. There was the firing squad or hanging. Believing a hanging could be botched. I know, they go hard. So believing a hanging could be botched, Gary chooses a firing squad, declaring, quote, "I'd prefer to be shot." This whole story is whack. And so then the execution's set. We have the scene is set, November 15th, 8 a.m. Against his expressed wishes, Gilmore receives several stays of execution throughout the efforts of the American Civil Liberties Union, or the ACLU. The last of these occurred just hours before the scheduled execution day, and the stay was overturned at 7:30 a.m., and the execution was allowed to proceed as planned. So, at a Board of Pardons hearing in November of 1976, Gilmore said the efforts of the ACLU and others to prevent his execution, quote, "They always want to get in on the act. I don't think they have ever really done anything effective in their lives. I would like them all, including that group of reverends and rabbis from Salt Lake City, to butt out. This is my life and this is my death. It's been sanctioned by the courts that I die, and I accept that." Quote.
Okay.
Okay, Gary, go off. But during the time that Gilmore was on death row awaiting his execution, he did attempt suicide twice. The first on November 16th, after the first day of execution was issued, and then another one on December 16th, like a month later.
Wow.
So the execution itself, and this is what he's actually famous for. And there's a very weird twist in all this that's going to blow your mind. So Gilmore, he's executed January 17th, 1977 at 8:07 a.m. by firing squad, as requested. On the morning, at the time of execution, he's transported to an abandoned cannery behind the prison, which serves as the death house. He's strapped to a chair. There's a wall of sandbags behind him to trap the bullets. 5 gunmen, who are all local police officers, they stood concealed behind a curtain with 5 small holes through which they aimed the rifles. When asked for any last words, Gilmore simply replied, quote, "Let's do it."
Okay.
So he's administered his last rites. The prison physician cloaks him in a black hood. Gilmore uttered his last words
Let's do
to
it.
Mearsman, the Reverend, which is Dominus Vobiscum, which is the Lord be with you. And, of course, the Reverend replies, and with your spirit, yada, yada. So in Utah, the firing squads consist of these 5 volunteer law enforcement officers from the county in which the conviction of the offender took place. He was restrained and hooded. The shots were fired at a distance of 20 feet, aiming at the chest. Prison officials stated that the firing squad comprised 4 men with live rounds and 1 with a blank, so that the shooters could not be certain as to who really fired the fatal shots. That's just kind of like the thing. However, upon inspecting the clothes worn by his brother at his execution, he notes that there were 5 holes in the shirt. So he says, the state of Utah apparently had taken no chances on the morning that they tried to put my brother to death. So, Gary had requested that some of his organs be donated for transplant purposes. Within hours of the execution, 2 people received his corneas. His body was sent for autopsy. He was cremated later that day, and the following day his ashes were scattered from an airplane over Spanish Fork, Utah. But here's why this is bananas. Here's why this is really bananas. So, Gilmore was the first person in the U.S. executed since the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976. So his story had immense cultural resonance at the time.
Uh-huh.
Here's what's wild to me. We know I work in marketing.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know my day job, I am a digital marketing manager at a biotech life sciences company. Going back to this, the founder of advertising agency Whedon and Kennedy, Dan Whedon, credits the inspiration for Nike's "Just Do It" slogan to Gilmore's last words of
"Shut up.
Let's do it." Yep. He said he just changed it because he thought, ever so slightly, because he thought it'd be too morbid, but that's apparently where they got it from. And so that's the weird
Ew,
twist.
No, gross.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
no.
I say as I have a pair of Nike sneakers sitting next to me on the floor. Yeah. That's, so that's, kids, Nike,
I'm nauseous.
Nike got their slogan from a murderer.
I'm nauseous.
Yeah. That's all I have to it. So this was, in sum, Gary Gilmore was clearly a super troubled dude. And
you
he had
don't say.
Super troubled upbringing and environment. It doesn't excuse literally anything that this guy did. And his life was relatively quick. He committed these couple of crimes that he committed a bunch of crimes, but these couple of super serious ones. He got caught. He got executed. And it led to a whole cultural thing.
I'm uncomfortable.
The end. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that the craziest
I am uncomfortable
part?
and I am nauseous.
Let's do it.
So, folks, maybe I don't even know where to begin other than don't tickle the dragon and maybe let's not do it.
Let's not just do it. Yeah. Like, although I gotta be honest, like, as far as last words go, let's do it. I mean, I don't think I'd have much else to say.
Yeah.
Be like, all right, let's do it. We're here. Yeah. So,
Wow.
I know, isn't that wild? So yeah, kids, don't play with radiation, and let's not do it. And until next time.
Stay strange.